Howdy, this is the Views from the Schott podcast. I'm your host, your one and only host, Tim Miller, and today it is Monday, January 12th, 2026, and I wish you a very, very, very happy Plow Monday. On today's show, we recap Ohio State against Washington. Took place yesterday evening. The Buckeyes fall to the Huskies 81-74 in Seattle. A tough loss that Ohio State takes here on the season. They fall to 11-5 and 3-3 in the Big Ten. There's a lot to get into from this game. Christoph Tilly suffers an injury. This Ohio State team is very, very thin at this point. Tilly's apparent rib injury takes him out of the game for the rest of the game. The Buckeyes have to go without their starting center after losing Brandon Knoll just two games earlier, and this is a thin team. So we will talk about everything that went on throughout this game, from key stats, performers, to my major takeaways from this game. We'll talk about kind of the status of Christoph Tilly and what happens moving forward with Tilly. Highly recommend you subscribe. You know it already. If you've been with the show for a while, this is the only Ohio State basketball exclusive podcast previewing and recapping every single game they play throughout the year. And then we have media members, coaches, players, other staff members, and those in the Ohio State basketball program on this very show throughout the offseason. So please do subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit the like button right now. Hit the like button. That helps out the show a bunch. And a 5-star review helps out as well. One other note here before we get into the show: views from the Schott podcast.substack.com. Highly recommend you get there. I always do. It's the only Ohio State basketball exclusive hub. I don't talk about Ohio State football. I don't talk about anything else other than Ohio State basketball on that Substack. So recommend you get there. I also do recommend you get to the chat. I've dropped a lot of intel there recently, so I highly, highly recommend you get there if you're curious about how does Ohio State football NIL and what's going on in that world affect Ohio State basketball NIL for the portal coming up this spring. If you're curious about the health of the team and a whole bunch of other things like that, recommend you get there to the chat. If you want a week free, I can get it to you. We've had a couple new subscribers recently, and of course, that chat is where you can also go to talk with a bunch of other like-minded fans who aren't as wild as the fans on Twitter, but still are very into Ohio State hoops. We had 120 messages exchanged during the Ohio State-Washington game last night. So if that sounds fun to you, recommend you get there. It's not great. I mean, it is great. It's not perfect for everyone, though. So it's okay if you don't want to get there. So today we got to talk the Buckeyes losing to Washington. I tell you what, if we can time travel and we can close our eyes and just go back to the first half. Do you remember that sequence that Ohio State had where Colin White comes in, he gets an offensive rebound, Buckeyes get another shot up, they miss it, but then it's Njegovan. I guess it's all the broadcasters are saying Njegovan, so I guess we're going Njegovan here on out. Njegovan, he gets a rebound on the offensive glass, another long possession, and then Bruce Thornton finally hits a step-back triple to get the Buckeyes to score. And then on the next possession, Washington, they get the ball, get it down to the rim, and Njegovan, he blocks a shot. Blocks it actually near the Canadian border, I do believe. I mean, he swatted that thing. And at that moment, I said, you know what? Ohio State's going to win this game. I feel really good about where Ohio State is. Felt like for a lot of that first half, they played really, really well. And there's been so many games this year for Ohio State where at halftime or closing in on halftime, we've said, man, I can't believe Ohio State is still in this game. You look at the Rutgers game is one that sticks out to me. The Pitt, West Virginia games also stick out to me where they had some pretty major deficits. There's been other games on the schedule this year that have been like that where you get to halftime and you say, man, Ohio State's lucky to only be down by 6 points at this point. And it was the inverse in this game, at least to me. I felt like Ohio State played well in the first half. I was really encouraged by how they played, especially offensively. Ohio State was scoring effectively. They were efficient from the field. They were making shots, and they were playing with ultimate aggression and physicality on the glass, which we'll talk about later in the show. That made me feel like, man, this team was shot out of a cannon for this game. It's game 2 of the West Coast trip. I feel like that first game, The first game you take, whether it's at USC, at UCLA, wherever it is out west, that first game, it takes some time really to get into things, into the swing of things, especially because a lot of times, or most of the time, those games, they're played on a weeknight because you typically have those days off, and then you'll play Wednesday or Thursday at that first West Coast team so that you can play on the weekend for that second West Coast team, and then you get the next week off, which is the case for Ohio State. So that first game, because it tips off sometimes at 10:30 p.m., like it was for Ohio State against Oregon, that's the game where you expect a slow start. You get into the second game, Ohio State gets off to a good start, and I'm not going to say it was expected, but it was really encouraging to see. And it was one of the best first halves of basketball Ohio State has played all year. Remember, against Oregon, that's the first time Ohio State has led at halftime against a Power 5 opponent this entire season. And they've won some of those games, but they've never led at halftime until the Oregon game, which they did win. They lead at halftime against Washington by just 2 points, and then the wheels just fall off. It felt like the instant. I mean, you could cut this game, not necessarily, yes, in half, not in terms of minutes, but you can cut the game in half. The first half being Christoph Tilly playing, the second half being Christoph Tilly takes a hard hit and is removed from the game. He does not return. That felt like the turning point in this game, and that's what felt like really caused Ohio State to lose this one. So it's a disappointing loss for Ohio State. Regardless, we're going to cover it all here today. I know a lot of fans upset, and it's just frustrating to see this team. We know the standard we want Ohio State to be at, and it's frustrating to see this team continue to lose these tight games. And it's why I've said all along, I don't believe Ohio State this year is an NCAA tournament team. Sitting at 11-4, but if you look at the losses that they've taken, at Nebraska, they lose by 3. But neutral site against North Carolina, they lose by 1. They should have won that game. I had some North Carolina fans who are now off in ACC land, so they won't be back with the pitchforks during this episode, but had some North Carolina fans in my mention saying Ohio State should have won that game. North Carolina was leading the whole way, blah, blah, blah. I think that we can sit down now and look back at that game. You were up, you turned the ball over, and that's how you lost the game. You turn the ball over late with the lead. North Carolina gets a score, you're unable to win it. If you don't turn the ball over and you get the ball past half court, you probably win the game. So yeah, I'll say Ohio State should have won that game. Against Nebraska, I already talked about it after the loss. Felt like that was the first one that I've had really where I've said, man, Jake Diebler, I don't know if you can pin that on anyone other than Jake Diebler in terms of late game decision making. The Illinois game, you lost by 8. You were with them, but you were pretty thoroughly beat by Illinois. So that one is a true L. And then the weird loss to Pitt, 67-66, where you lose on that 3-point buzzer beater. You just, when you continue to have losses like this, and even the wins against Notre Dame by 1, the win against West Virginia in double overtime, which they did beat Kansas over the weekend. That's huge for Ohio State's resume. You want West Virginia to keep winning, absolutely. The win over Rutgers, where you win by 7, but you were trailing by 15 or 16, however many it was in that game. Ohio State hasn't been all that impressive this year, even in the major wins that they've had against power conference opponents. So that said, I haven't said this in an NCAA tournament team, but at some point it does get really frustrating when you continue to see these trends where Ohio State loses these games that are pretty tight. So how did Ohio State lose this game? Well, the first thing I have to say, there's not really, when I get into key stats and performers, normally there's 1 or 2 stat profiles that really stick out that kind of decide the game. I'm not sure there's really one like that in this one, but I will start with the one that I do think is closest to the biggest one, and that's this. Washington shot 8 more free throws than Ohio State, and the Huskies won by 7 points. As we enter math class here on the Views from the Schott podcast, we know a free throw is worth 1 point. Washington got 1 more free throw than, 8 more free throws than Ohio State and won by 7 points. Free throws were a huge issue in this game, and I said it coming into it. If you listen to the preview show, it's worth it sometimes, folks. One of the keys to the game, I said, Ohio State has to play clean defensively. Now, that's easy to say. It's a pretty lazy, just normal thing to say about a team, But as you look at how Washington profiles, this is why I said it. Well, Ohio State, looking at how they profile defensively, looking at how Washington likes to score, Washington in games with 17 free throws made or more this season are 8-2. They're now moving up to 9-2. Ohio State had allowed 17 or more free throws made in just one 40-minute game this season. That was against Illinois. So the odds were Ohio State was going to be maybe not great here, but fine, potentially. But in this game, Washington makes 19 of 23 free throws. I talked in the preview show about how good Washington is at the free throw line. And unfortunately, Washington won this battle. The Washington offense was able to get to the free throw line. I know a lot of people unhappy about the officiating in this game. The officiating is something that you can't control. It's out of your hands. You can complain and you can get upset. And I totally understand that. I totally understand fans getting upset about officiating, but both sides have to deal with it. There's some good calls, some bad calls. I was watching, I think it's Bruce Weber was talking yesterday before the Indiana-Nebraska game, who said, man, I didn't realize how difficult their jobs were as officials until I went home and realized all the calls that I was mad about. I watch a replay, and from his vantage point, he kind of understands why they make the call and how hard their job is. So I get people being upset. You got to go win the game. You can't let that be an excuse. And unfortunately, again, Washington wins this battle. Frank Chatman, who, again, I think I tweeted this. He played extremely recklessly in this game, and you give him credit. He really didn't get called for fouls. There were a lot of physical plays where he was allowed to play and continue on. He did get called for 4 personal fouls in this game, but it felt like there were a lot of times where you could have called more fouls. And Washington, in general, played just with a haphazard effort, and it benefited them. Kepnang, 7 of 8 from the free throw line. Zoom Diallo made all 6 of his free throw attempts. Hannes Steinbach, 3 of 3 from the free throw line. They were really good, 19 of 23 overall. Washington made 6 more free throws than Ohio State made in this game. That was the main lever that Washington pulled in order to win this game. Ohio State made 1 more three-pointer than Washington made. They made 1 less field goal attempt than Washington made in this one. So that said, it really comes down to free throw shooting. Washington's ability to get to the free throw line feels like that's how they won this game. Another key stat, talk about Bruce Thornton again. 28 points, 9 of 17 shooting. He makes 3 3-pointers, 7 of 8 from the free throw line. He got to the free throw line really effectively in the second half. He had 4 rebounds, 3 assists. It's another complete game from Bruce Thornton. It's another game where he scores from everywhere on the court. This is going to be a guy who plays in the NBA. I'm not an NBA guy. I've said that before. I don't follow the NBA closely whatsoever, but the way that Bruce Thornton plays, the motor that he's able to play with night in and night out when he has to be the guy every single night and play minute after minute after minute, and you're getting subbed out literally one time. Bruce Thornton gets subbed out once. That's it. He's playing the rest of the game. As he continues to try to produce, as he continues to try to play well for Ohio State, unfortunately, Ohio State has not been able to consistently win with him in the driver's seat. It's another 37-minute game for Bruce Thornton. It's his 7th game with 20-plus points so far this season. Only the 2nd time Ohio State has lost when he scored 20 points or more. Do you know the least amount of minutes Bruce Thornton has played against a Power 5 opponent this year? I'll let you wonder. You're probably thinking, I would be thinking 33, 34, maybe something like that. The least amount of minutes Bruce Thornton has played against Power 5 opponents so far this year is 37 minutes. That is wild. I'll pull up his numbers actually now, courtesy of College Basketball Analytics. Against Power 5 teams, again, he played 37 minutes against Washington tonight. He played 49 of 50 minutes against West Virginia. He played all 40 minutes against Illinois. Against Notre Dame, he played 39. He played 38 against Pitt and Northwestern, and then 37 against Nebraska, Oregon, North Carolina, Rutgers, and now Washington. This guy doesn't get a break, and yet he continues to produce for Ohio State. Unfortunately, tonight, not enough to win for the Buckeyes. Ohio State won the rebounding game in this one 39-29. This was highly, highly encouraging when this game started and Ohio State was dominating on the glass. Washington had 10 total rebounds in the first half. 10, 1, 0. 10 rebounds in the first half for Washington. The Buckeyes were plus 10 on the glass at halftime. They end this game plus 10 on the glass, 39-29, the final margin. This, all the while, you don't have Brandon Knoll for the entire game. This, all the while, you don't have Christoph Tilly for the second half. That's really impressive from Ohio State, in my opinion. You look at what Ohio State was able to do, rebounding individually. It was Devin Royal who led the way with 8 rebounds in this one for Ohio State. Njegovan comes off the bench. He has 6 rebounds. I'll talk about him now. I wasn't that impressed with his play, especially down the stretch. A bounce pass to his knees. He's not able to bring it in. It's a turnover for Ohio State. There was another possession very late in the game where he had a chance for a rebound, just didn't go up and get the ball, and instead Washington gets a score. I understand that he's playing right now just due to the lack of depth that Ohio State has, due to the fact that Josh Ojawuna cannot play for Ohio State, and all of those different types of things. I get all of that, but he's not ready. He's not ready. He's not ready to play for Ohio State. I don't think he was that great. He sometimes really shows a nice touch around the rim. He was 2 of 4 from the field in this one, but the times where he can't play strong and he brings the ball down to his belly, and that's chest level for everyone else essentially, so he can go, those defenders can go grab the ball and you get a jump ball. Luckily Ohio State keeps it. Pissed off Njegovan, but you got to keep the ball in your hands. You got to play strong with the ball, go back up with it, use the height that you have, all those different types of things. Yeah, he rebounded well in this one, but some pretty poor moments, I think, from him as well. Overall, he plays 25 minutes in this game. Other key rebounders, you saw John Mobley Jr., Amari Bynum, and Bruce Thornton all pull in 4 rebounds in this game. So it was absolutely a team effort from Ohio State. Literally every single player who played in this game had rebounds, all the way from Bruce Thornton down to Taison, Chatman, Colin White. Every single player had a rebound. When you're plus 10 on the board, you got to win. I mean, it's that simple. That's way too many extra shots that you're getting and way too many shots that you're stuffing away from the other team that they're not able to take. You got to win the game. You can't be plus 10 on the glass and lose the game. Unfortunately, Ohio State does in this one. Amari Bynum, I'll talk about him. So this is something that we were talking about in the chat, and I said, man, what has Bynum done in this game? Dunking? How many times has he missed a dunk in this game? And someone responds back and says, probably 3. And he was exactly right. Amari Bynum went 2 of 5 on dunk attempts in this game. Ohio State coming into this game against Washington was 4th in the nation in dunk share. Curious what dunk share is? It's a percentage of field goals made that come from dunks. That is courtesy of Bart Torvik's website. Just imagine, I get you lost by 7. And if Bynum makes all 3 of his dunk attempts, then you're down by 1 still. But how does that change the final minute? You don't have to foul constantly. You don't have to get mad when Washington dribbles out a lot of the shot clock before Devin Royal finally is able to foul whoever had the ball in his hands. It was the guard who came off the bench and was 1 of 4 from the free throw line, I believe. But you don't have to be upset about that because the game's tighter. You can just defend. You can take a possession to defend. Or you do foul. Instead of being down by 6 or 5, you're down by 2. And the whoever it was, I'll find his name now just because it's I might as well say it at this point. JJ Mandequit, he goes 1 of 4 from the free throw line. If he goes 1 of 4 and you're only down by 2, guess what? You got a chance to go win it potentially. So missing those dunk attempts, that hurts, but I mean, how much more can you really ask of Amari Bynum at the same time? 20 points in this one. I believe that's a career high. Let me check to be sure here, courtesy again of College Basketball Analytics. It is a career high for freshman Amari Bynum. 20 points in this one, 8 of 19 from the field. He had 4 rebounds, made a couple threes, had an assist, and he played 37 minutes for Ohio State. And this is going to get very, very common for the Buckeyes. It's the minutes that are being played by these starters with the lack of depth that they have. So Bynum, he missed a fair amount of dunk attempts in this game, and yet he still had a really solid performance here for Ohio State. Sometimes it's okay to lay it in. I don't know if that's what Jake Diebler's message will be to Amari Bynum, but some of those dunks being missed, they were frustrating, and unfortunately, it did contribute somewhat to the loss for Ohio State. A couple other stats here. One player had a positive plus minus for Ohio State. Would you like to guess who that would have been? I'll give you a couple seconds here to think. Who's the only player who had a positive plus minus for Ohio State? And this one, answer is Taison Chatman. It's +1, so it's barely positive, but he's the only player to be at least neutral, net zero, or positive in this one. Look, he only played 5 minutes, but I thought he looked solid in the 5 minutes that he got. He did miss both of the shots that he took from the field. From the field in this one. Losing my voice at this point. But he had an offensive and a defensive rebound. He had an assist. He had a steal that probably should have led to another assist. Ohio State unable to score in on that possession. I think Amari Bynum, he might have missed a shot or something weird happened there at the end of that. Look, I know a lot of fans are clamoring. I need a sip of water. Sorry. Still, this cold, it just lingers. I know a lot of people clamoring for Taison Chatman, clamoring for Matthew Grudicek to get playing time. I completely understand. I'm not going to say I disagree. I've talked enough about that situation on the Substack, so there's fans I see always wondering about this. You don't have to wonder much longer. Just ask for a free week trial. I will get it to you in the Substack. You can see the answer on that. And you can also unlock access to everything I've sent of all time in the Substack chat. And you can verify how many times have I been wrong. It's not been many, if ever, at this point in that Substack chat. I only post stuff there if I know it's right. And it's a quick plug for that. So I've talked enough about that. At the same time, though, I don't know. Jake Diebler has now been around Taison Chatman for 3 years. I get last year was the ACL injury. He missed the entire season, but you've been around him long enough, I think, at this point to know if I'm going to retain him, I'm going to be able to trust him. And I'm going to be able to give him those minutes. And I told you in the offseason, they like how Taison Chatman looks. They like how he's rehabbing. He's fully healthy. Now he's moving like an NBA player. And at the same time, he can't get into the game. It took a Christoph Tilly injury for Taison Chatman to finally get minutes in this one. And still he played 5 minutes. So I just wonder. I wonder if there was not really much of a plan for Taison Chatman to play this year, then why is he still on the team? At the same time, due to the knee injury, due to the timing and all that, you really didn't know what you were going to get out of him. At the same time, the portal was opening and it was hard to make a decision. They felt like they wanted to keep him, obviously, and that's fine. I just wonder at this point, would you rather have let him walk and you go find your solution somewhere else from the portal? I wonder, because he still can't get on the floor. All these injuries, he's still only able to play 5 minutes in a game. Again, I thought he looked pretty solid, but I know the reasons why he doesn't play, and that's that. John Mobley Jr., Devin Royal combined for 14 points in this game, 5 of 14 shooting. That number much better when you add in Devin Royal's performance. 4 turnovers combined from the two. You continue to get good. You continue to get bad. You continue to get ugly mixed in from these guys. John Mobley Jr. was atrocious shooting in this one. He had 3 points, only 1 of 5 from the field, 1 of 3 from the 3-point line. He had 3 turnovers as well. He did have 4 assists, so give him credit there. But you're continuing to have 2 players who sometimes it's just like we power down. It's like the Xbox, the batteries fell out or the batteries died, and we kind of stop thinking for a possession on defense, or we have a boneheaded decision offensively with a bad pass, whatever the case may be. Ohio State really needed those 2 to give you something more than what they gave in this one, and unfortunately, not great output from those 2. Last point, Washington scored 40 paint points in this game. I did like the zone Ohio State threw out there against Washington in this one. I thought they might zone Washington a little bit more because of the 3-point shooting and lack thereof production from the Huskies. But unfortunately, Washington made threes. In the first half, when they started to get zoned, Washington started to make threes. And that's kind of the spark that allowed the Huskies to get in the game for the first time since Ohio State started to take it over a little bit early on. So I thought the zone would be there. It was there. Unfortunately, it allowed Washington to make the threes. But once you lose Tilly, with Noel out for the game, defending the paint becomes very, very difficult. It becomes a huge challenge for Ohio State. In terms of foul trouble, Ohio State stayed out of it. They committed 17 fouls in this game. No one had 4 fouls. Amari Bynum had 3. Devin Royal had 3. A bunch of players had 2. A couple players had 1. Actually, everyone on the team had at least 1 foul in this game. But I don't hate forcing Washington to shoot threes, especially without Wesley Yates, Desmond Claude, those guys in the backcourt who aren't great shooting the 3 ball or refuse to shoot the 3 ball. But unfortunately, they dropped in this one, and that allowed Washington essentially to not have to deal with the zone anymore. Ohio State came out with a little bit in the second half, but Washington able to get into the paint and score. I only bring that up because I wanted to talk about the zone defense. So it is what it is. Takeaways from this one. My opinion, can't afford to lose this game. Can't afford to lose this game. I'm not saying that it was a must-win. Exact same game as Oregon. It wasn't a must-win, but you really couldn't afford to lose it. This is a game you couldn't afford to lose specifically because Washington has no Lathan Somerville for 4, 5, 6 straight games now. No Wesley Yates, no Desmond Claude. Yates is your second leading scorer. Claude is your fourth leading scorer. Somerville is a guy Ohio State had interest in the transfer portal before he committed to Washington, coming over from Rutgers. I just, this is a game where Washington had no depth. And I saw some people saying on Twitter, well, Washington, they played with more urgency, or Washington needed this game more. I don't buy that for 1 second. I don't give Washington credit there whatsoever. Ohio State needs this game just as much as Washington. Washington's 9-6. They're not 7-8 coming into this game and fighting for their lives in January. It's January 11th. There's no way that inside that locker room with Danny Sprinkle there saying, hey guys, we really need to win this one. We need to win this game in order to stay alive here for an NCAA tournament bid. That's not anywhere close to where Washington is right now. So I don't think they were playing so desperate, and we give them credit for winning. But what I will say is Ohio State shouldn't have lost this game. And losing those 3 players, absolutely. When you see the fact that 2 of those guys are going to be out, another one doesn't play throughout the game, you've got to win the game, even with the lack of depth, even with losing Christoph Tilly. This is a game that Ohio State should have flown home with 2 wins in their back pocket, 1 in Eugene, 1 in Seattle. Unfortunately, they're unable to do it. However, another takeaway that's kind of piggybacks off this point and kind of disagrees with it is Christoph Tilly. When he left the game, that was kind of it for Ohio State. I'll have to go back and check to see when exactly Tilly was injured and when he left the game. It doesn't, we don't need the math though. Washington scored more points than Ohio State from the time that Tilly left the game to the end of the game. So that probably decided the game. So you look at being upset with Jake Diebler, you look at being upset that the team lost the game. Well, once you lose your starting center and you don't have some depth, it makes it really hard to win. And I know the fans, the sentiment then at that point would be, well, if Jake Diebler could build a roster, then it wouldn't have been an issue and they would have won the game. And while that may be true, although I don't really agree with it, I did like the roster construction this year, although I did have concerns about the depth. I love the starting 5. I didn't really hate the roster construction really coming into the year, so I guess I can't really complain about it all that much now, or maybe I can. I don't know. Revisionist history, whatever. You lose Tilly, and that pretty much does it. And it's unfortunate for Ohio State, but there's nothing you can do about it now. You can't go back and change the roster. I still don't think that they're going to add anyone midseason. I think that's kind of died down at this point. So it's tough for Ohio State, but I do think that losing Tilly probably loses you this game as well. For those who complained about Brandon Knoll, for those who said Brandon Knoll should have stayed at Wright State, Brandon Knoll's not a Big Ten player. Brandon Knoll can't survive at Ohio State. I wish we didn't have Brandon Knoll on the roster. How much would you have liked to have Brandon Knoll in this game? Do you think Ohio State is better off or worse off with Brandon Knoll in this game? I think it's pretty clear, especially with the lack of depth in the front court, as we always talk about, that if Ohio State had Brandon Knoll in this game, they probably have a pretty good shot to win this game. So sometimes players can frustrate you. Sometimes you can feel upset. You don't know you don't know what you have until it's gone. And Brandon Knoll is gone at this point. And unfortunately, because you didn't have him in this game, Ohio State loses. Is Brandon Knoll worth 3 points offensively? Do you think Brandon Knoll scores 3 additional points for Ohio State in this game? Is he worth 3 points defensively? You think Brandon Knoll just comes down with a defensive rebound and doesn't allow Washington to score on second chance points? Which, how many second chance points did Washington have? In this game, they had 11, so not crazy, but 11 is 11. Let's say they score 9. And then Brandon Knoll blocks a shot, or he alters a shot that's missed, and Ohio State gets the ball back. You think Brandon Knoll's not worth that? I think he potentially is. And again, for those who complain about Knoll, I bet you would have liked. And if you say that you wouldn't like to have him, then I think you're just salty. That's my opinion. So here's the thing. If Christoph Tilly misses time for Ohio State, I don't know what the starting lineup looks like. I don't know if Ivan Njegovan gets into the starting lineup at the 5, or if you're looking at a 3-guard starting lineup and then Devin Royal slides to the 4 and Amari Bynum starts at the 5. But you're now going to have to go play UCLA coming up here on Saturday. Not a bad team whatsoever. The exact same record as Ohio State overall. And UCLA, they've got Tyler Bilodeau. They've got some good guards too. Absolutely. I'm trying to pull up their roster here. Donovan Dent has been okay. I mean, I think we remember in the offseason how big of a deal it was that he entered the transfer portal. He's scoring 13 points per game at this point. Eric Daly Jr. has been really solid for them as well, but he's got size. Bilodeau has size. Sky Clark not playing all that bad for UCLA either. And from Ken Palm, let's take a look at UCLA's average height. Sorry, maybe I should have had this before recording, but I guess we're going down a little bit of a rabbit trail now. Average height, 81st in the nation. So UCLA, not necessarily the biggest team, but in terms of their starters, you look at Eric Daly Jr., you look at Bilodeau, you also look at Xavier Booker, by the way, who gets a lot of minutes. They've got some real size on that team. And I don't know. I don't know if Njegovan is the guy that you want getting a bunch of minutes. So you really need Christoph Tilly to play. And another kind of last minute thought here that I will give. As you look at where Ohio State stands right now, Bruce Thornton is playing 36.2 minutes per game. That's 99th percentile in college basketball. As you look at the minute distribution that he gets when it comes to power conference games, we've already talked about it. He's going to play at least 37 minutes as well. So right now he's playing a bunch. He's getting a bunch of playing time right now for Ohio State. You look at overall bench minutes for Ohio State. This number is going to continue to get worse. They are 309th in the nation in bench minutes. 27% of minutes go to the bench right now. That means starters are playing a bunch. Devin Royal is averaging 31.4 minutes per game. John Mobley Jr., 29.1. Christoph Tilly, 27.1. Amari Bynum, that number is going to continue to go up. He's at 24.9. Once these numbers update with the Ohio State-Washington game, that number is going to go up. So, look, you've got a lack of depth, and you've got starters playing a bunch of minutes. I start to get concerned about this team running out of steam down the stretch. We'll see. It all depends on if Tilly can play against UCLA or if he's going to be out for an extended period of time. This team's not healthy, by the way. That's as specific as I will be about that. There's other players who are dealing with things right now that is not public, that is not known by people, but this team is not healthy. They need to take today all the way through the week and get healthy for this game against UCLA. It's going to be a big one. It'll be a home game. So that's going to be a big time opportunity for Ohio State. Until then, here's what we're going to do. Another nice little layoff here. So you get the show today. On Wednesday morning, you're going to get a show with me and a bit of an Ohio State legend. Matt Sylvester will join the show. We're just going to talk about what are you seeing from Ohio State basketball this year? What's your expectation going forward? What do you see that looks good? What do you not like from Ohio State? Things like that. That's what we'll talk about. And then on Friday, you'll get a show with a UCLA against Ohio State preview show before the Buckeyes take on the Bruins on Saturday. So that's what you can expect here from the Views from the Schott podcast this week. I appreciate being here so much. If you enjoy the content and you haven't given a 5-star review yet to this show, I highly, highly, highly encourage you to do it. It would be a huge help to the show. It would make me happy. It should make you happy. Everyone can be happy. No one loses in this situation other than the Nut House. If you're curious about why I say that and you don't know the lore and you got into this show a little bit late, maybe I'll explain it sometime if someone asks. Not like it was that long ago. I think it was just last season. I don't know, man. These years run into one another at this point. All right. Appreciate you being here today. More than you could ever understand. It's been a pleasure talking Buckeye hoops for a little bit over a half hour. Until next time, I shut up. Before you shut me off, go Bucks.